What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day, morning, noon, night, whatever it is for you guys. Hope you're having the best day possible. So today, guys, we are going to be hopping back into some Star Wars versus Warhammer. So we've already finished up episode 7. We're going to be hopping into episode 8. But guys, we had the man, the myth, the legend, a fan with too much time has actually reached out and said he liked what we were doing. So that's pretty cool. But he said the next 2 episodes are going to be real juicy. So I'm excited to see what he's got to offer for us, guys. So without further ado, let's hop right on into it. Star Wars versus Warhammer, episode 8. What is it? Warriors verse V2? Warriors version 2? Let's get into it. Alrighty, you guys. Let's put the ears on. Make sure we can hear what's going on. Alrighty. And like always, guys, this video is not monetized. So go support this man for the great animations he is doing and the great writing.
Welcome, little one. Welcome, little one. We expect great things from you.
I forget the name of this planet where the clones are created.
You are each a piece of a whole person.
God, that's gonna bug me. I'm tipping my tongue. I know what it is.
Born into dangerous times,
What is it?
and the Republic will call you to defend and give your lives, if need be. Give your lives.
And as my first act with this new authority,
For you are something truly special.
I will create a grand
Your weapons,
army of the Republic
your armor,
to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists.
and most importantly, your brothers.
Episode 8, Warriors.
Can you stop it? Asked General Skywalker.
It's my man Anakin.
Well, I can try, Echo said, hesitance ringing from his every syllable, though duty drove him forward in the attempt. The Jedi wasted no time, unfolding his arms and turning to leave the small, brightly lit comm vault. General, where are you going? Rex asked as Anakin began to run. If you can't stop the
All the way
detonation, perhaps Trench can. But Echo had no time to think about the general. He would take care of himself. Time was limited, time was slipping by, and he needed to figure out the sequence before the planet cracker went off. He found that the 328 data locks and 48,000 authentication gates were almost trivial to slice through, especially given the method and origin of his, integrated equipment. It wasn't long before he had access, reaching out to seize and begin decrypting the code file. But suddenly, it was gone. Everything was gone.
Disappeared.
But this blankness, this placidity only lasted for a fraction of a second, and then pain. Echo writhed, yet could not move, screamed, and yet felt his lips only tremble, his voice sealed. Something was attacking him, attacking his mind. It drove
Mental
deep
barriers.
into him while at the same time surrounding his every thought and access, both to the ship computer and to his own body. He resisted. He struggled, but it was like wrestling with a thorn bush. He had no idea how to even really fight, and every attempted defense he raised seemed as liable to hurt himself as aid his struggle. Meanwhile, whatever was attacking was almost ignoring him, sifting through his thoughts like a steel rake cutting lines in the mud. It was exposing him, reading him, drinking him in like a spider drinks in the insides of an insect. Without warning,
Spider-
it paused, and
Always.
Echo sagged as much as he was able, grateful for the brief respite, though his body was still held rigid and unresponsive. Then, a question. No, a command. A compulsion. Identify yourself. Echo did not resist nor comply, having still been considering whether or not to inform this entity of anything, when it decided for him. Again, pain like Echo had never known coursed through him, cutting from the outermost layer of his superficial self to the deepest part of what he could call himself. The pain ceased, and the order came again.
Identify.
Echo! My name is Echo, and if you're not a separatist, then I am not your enemy! He yelled into the void which surrounded him. The pain did not return. Distantly, he could hear the voice of Mace Windu calling to him, asking him for the codes, but he still couldn't move or even feel his physical body. I am Brother Taslion, of the Crimson Razes chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, said a voice which seemed at once to come from all around Echo and from within him as well. Though the clone could not blink, he felt as though he must have, as the form of a man appeared standing before him. He was a human, a little taller than Echo himself was. He had dusky skin and clear brown eyes. His expression was stern, yet not unkind. His face, exposed hands and feet, were flawless, with smooth skin and youthful features. He wore red robes, the linings of which were spoked and colored yellow like the outer ends of golden cogs. Aside from his odd attire, the man seemed different in just one other way. The air around him seemed off. Perhaps it was the way he stood, or the unusual depth in his clear eyes, but he gave the impression of a false thing, like an acklay having been crammed into the skin and robes of a Jawa. Tell me more of whom you fight for, and you may yet survive to tell your republic that their time has come to an end. Brother Arachnus was keeping watch, and it was a good thing, too. All of the others who should be taking up the duty were only armed with meager sidearms. Pathetic! They would never react as quickly and with as much range as he could with his bolter. It was simply a fact. A fact he demonstrated when the hatch into the bridge opened wide, a man in black robes running in. The intruder seemed
Mr.
shocked by what he
Skywalker.
saw. That being Brother Arachnus and his fire team all assembled around Brother Taslion, who was crouching atop the odd command throne the spider-like Zeno had been using earlier. His mechadendrites poured over the whole apparatus like a stream of steel, and some still cradled the deceased form of the alien which had given its life to delay Brother Taslion. A vicious smile slid onto Brother Arachnus' hidden face, but not before he pulled the trigger of his bolter. The man could not run, could not dodge. He held some kind of cylindrical device in his hand, but the shot was coming too quickly to activate it. And then Brother Arachnus watched as the stranger seemed to flinch even before the bolt shell had fully left the barrel, making a gesture with his left hand as he dodged right. But it wouldn't matter. Arachnus was sure of it, a surety he lost as he watched the air-splittingly fast bolts of his gun twist away from their intended target, as if suddenly subjected to concentrated gale force winds. At the sight of this blasphemous phenomenon, this intolerable defiance of the Emperor's will, a name, an identification rose to his lips. He spoke it, no, screamed it before he even knew what he was saying or even precisely why. But none doubted his instinct or claim when he did, and he was glad for it was true. Witch! Brother Arachnus roared.
Witches!
The man was already fleeing at unnatural speed back the way he came. He activated a blue sword of incandescent light and threw it, sending it in an arc to strike a nearby control panel. Before another breath could even be drawn, Brother
gone.
Hastus, wielding his power sword in both hands, launched himself clean through the closing gap in the doorway, barely clearing it before it slammed shut. Other members of the fire team moved to open the door, but found its esoteric mechanisms unresponsive. Seeing no other choice, Arachnus turned to his brother. Taslian, awaken from your reverie. We had an intruder. Slowly, Taslian's helmed head turned to face Brother Arachnus and received a report on what had just happened.
Somebody got in here.
That was probably one of the Jedi, Brother Taslian said. Jedi? Arachnus repeated. His voice seemed to snap Brother Taslian back to the immediate moment, and he shook his head gently. Call your man back. Anakin was running, and one of those things from inside the bridge was chasing. What were they? New droids? New separatists? He would have guessed not from the sight of Admiral Trench's still smoking body, but they didn't seem to be discriminating between who they targeted with those slug throwers. Or were they high-powered grenade launchers? Anakin wasn't sure, but what he was sure of was that the one chasing him, somehow keeping pace with him, was not using a gun of his own. Both of his hands clamped around a large, broad blade. Taking a gamble, Anakin spun to meet his adversary. He was gone. Something Anakin knew to be an illusion of some sort, as he had felt the being's loping, hammering footfalls only just prior. Still, canny though he was, if it had not been for his skill and precognition, he would have fallen victim to Hastus's ploy, the massive Marine having read Anakin's intention to turn about in his movement, and leapt smoothly and quickly to the right, away from the Jedi's sweeping line of sight. From there, he coiled for an instant, absorbing all the force of his sudden leap and converting it into the power he used to fuel a lunging thrust. Normally, most enemies would be too stunned by the sudden vanishing of their pursuer to react appropriately to the second of time they had before his blade met their chest, but not Anakin. Reacting instinctively, moving before his eyes ever connected with the hurtling form of the Astartes, Anakin backstepped out of the path of the blade's edge and put his gamble to the test. He whipped his radiant blue saber out, watching in mild appreciation as the huge warrior before him both halted his considerable momentum and swept his sword in to intercept Anakin's swipe with a slash of his own. Clearly both expected their swords to overcome the other, and as lightsaber met power field, both were proven wrong. The energy field containing the plasma and radiation which composed the lightsaber and the power field which gave the power sword its name repulsed violently when they met, the field sparking and filling the air with the smell of ozone and burning metal, while the saber seemed to bend ever so slightly as it resisted the focused edge of the enemy weapon. But the power sword did bear one advantage over the saber. It was heavy, very heavy. The Marine roared like a beast, letting the sound be loosed through his helmet speakers as he twisted his torso, completing the follow-through on his swing and sending Anakin almost flying. No sooner had the Jedi managed to catch himself and balance his footing before the Astartes was on him again, aggressively pursuing, pushing his enhanced physiology to allow the Jedi no moments of rest.
No rest.
But Anakin made him pay for that mindless aggression. Against a normal opponent, the massive warrior may well have overwhelmed them with his furious, reckless attacks. But Anakin had been fighting against the Sage Ventress long enough to be well versed in how to counter that tactic, and despite the unnatural speed of the Astartes he faced, he was wielding just one blade, not two, and he was all speed, all power. Anakin swayed, allowing the sparking power sword to slide inches away from his body as he struck with his own weapon. The Jedi learned then that, while the power sword could repel a lightsaber, the armor of these new warriors could not. Anakin leapt back, kicking off of the chest of the enemy, and was not pursued, drawing his saber away from the scorched helmet of the Marine. Anakin had thought that maneuver would not be enough, had thought it was too little, too late, but when the warrior reached up and pulled away his smoking helmet, he realized this was somehow not the case. From his jaw to his now missing ear, the man had clearly suffered direct contact from the Jedi's weapon. His teeth were exposed on the left side of his face, some burnt away, many still glowing bright orange, as was the remnant of his cheekbone and the portion of exposed skull near where his ear used to be. Yet this warrior...
Ooh, guys, could you imagine that? It's like your bone and your teeth are just like molten metal and just sitting there after being ripped by the lightsaber. Ooh. I mean, I would assume that probably doesn't. He can't feel it. That's at least third-degree burns. So, sucks to be him, but at least maybe he's not feeling it.
Warrior did not reach up in pain or horror, did not flinch or turn away from the agony of his injuries, and did not sway or seem in any way intoxicated. His eyes, bright green and piercing, never left Anakin as he dropped his smoking helmet to the ground and spread his legs, taking up a wide stance as both his hands took the haft of his power sword in a trained grip. "Trust me, friend," Anakin said as he swept his saber into several quick flourishes, taking up a stance of his own. "You do not want to do this." The warrior seemed to not understand him, something Anakin had fully expected. He found himself unexpectedly longing for C-3PO's unsolicited interjections, especially as the warrior gave a single, short nod and dashed forward. Anakin met his charge with a countercharge, sliding into his favored lightsaber form. He had been playing it defensively before, much like his master would have done, allowing the enemy to create his own openings and taking advantage of them once discovered. But that had never been Anakin's style. No, he preferred to create his own openings, to dominate his opponent with overwhelming power. This was a mistake, for in engaging Brother Hastis in this manner, Anakin had removed himself from the center of his advantage as a Jedi, precognition and agility, and had moved into realms in which the Astartes held nearly all the cards. They clashed like a spike of ice meeting a tsunami, but not one composed of salty, chilled water. The wave which crashed over the determined pinnacle of Anakin's assault was made of molten, burning metal, and though he resisted mightily, Anakin found himself overcome. He felt all the air rush out of his lungs as he was carried into the wall, managing to keep his saber up, his back now braced against the steel of the ship. Brother Hastis kept his wide stance as he laid on even more pressure, pinning the Jedi by the sheer force of his own two-handed slash. Anakin gasped, trying to pull air back into himself, trying to keep himself from being sliced in half by the unreal strength of the warrior who pinned him. His saber was shrieking, the containment field bending as it was braced against the power field. He could feel the heat, could smell the burning of his robes, of the skin around his good hand. "Wrecking time!" The deep call was followed by a sudden jerk as the Space Marine was thrown clean off of Anakin, hitting the wall opposite them heavily. The Astartes whipped his sword out to catch the new attacker with its lethal edge, but failed to land a solid strike, leaving only a deep, bleeding furrow in Wrecker's chest. The huge clone didn't even seem to notice, arms extending to catch his DC-17M rifle, which had been tossed to him by his sergeant, and began to unload into the hostile he had pulled off of the general. The Marine hit the wall hard, but didn't hesitate either, rebounding off of it instantly, only pulled up short by Wrecker's sudden volley of near point-blank fire. Still, not one shot could land on Hastis's armor, the Marine using the flat of his power sword to rapidly swipe away at the incoming blaster bolts. Anakin had fallen to his knees the instant he could, dropping his saber and cupping his burned hand as he dragged a long breath into his flattened lungs. Captain Rex was there in moments, helping Anakin to his feet as Sergeant Hunter gingerly retrieved the General's cooling lightsaber. "General, are you alright?" asked Rex. Anakin coughed and nodded, leaning on the clone as his vision cleared. "I'll be fine. Is everyone here?" Rex nodded towards Tech, who had Echo in tow. He was helping to support the augmented clone, but Echo seemed lucid. Terrified, but lucid. "Crosshair stayed behind to cover Rex started. Not to freak anyone out, but this guy isn't stopping!" Wrecker yelled, still unloading into the Marine, and still getting nowhere with that tactic.
Just die
Meanwhile,
already.
Brother Hastis had been making headway, step by step. He had no idea how powerful these alien weapons were, and was determined not to allow any of them to defile his blessed armor, swiping each blast out of the air one after another. But these bolts were slower than bullets, and much easier to track with the naked eye, and Hastus found it almost easy to continue deflecting the blasts while advancing. Already, he was almost close enough to strike the brute who had thrown him. And then Wrecker's rifle ran out of power, and Hastus lunged. Wrecker was saved by the immediate actions of Anakin Skywalker, Captain Rex, Sergeant Hunter, and Commando Tech, the first of whom drew Wrecker just out of the reach of Hastus's blade with a force pull, almost throwing Wrecker into himself. The other three opened fire, Tech with one sidearm, Rex with two, and Hunter with his own DC-17M, pushing the Marine back as Hastus found himself overmatched by their combined firepower. He created distance between them, angling himself to retreat down the hallway the clones had come from, keeping them in front of him as he brought himself to a manageable range, where he would be able to continue deflecting bolts with just one arm. He felt pinpricks of heat around his body during his initial retreat as several bolts slipped past his guard, and almost smirked with the half of his lips which remained. These weapons were about as powerful as lasguns, and much easier to avoid. He shifted his stance, defending his...
They're about as powerful as lasguns. So you're saying those blasters basically equivalent of flashlights to y'all? Oh god. So I guess it didn't matter. The stormtroopers could never hit anything because it's not like they would do anything, right?
His head only as one of his hands departed his dancing blade, reaching behind himself. Blaster bolts pelted ineffectively against the ceramite plates of his power armor, and Tech's mouth gaped wide as he watched blaster bolts capable of blowing holes 2 feet around in ferrocrete simply bouncing off of this new enemy's ornate armor. Small dents and marks formed in some places, and the power armor glowed red-hot in others, but all in all, it seemed to be doing nearly nothing. He began to wonder why the warrior didn't just charge them with his sword and start cutting. Then the warrior raised his free hand up into the air. What he held was large, even in his huge hand, and roughly shaped like a green, spineless pineapple. "Grenade!" Tech yelled, but was cut off as the explosion went off. It detonated, not on the ground and not in the air, but in the warrior's hand, before he had even thrown it. The blast was massive. It almost knocked them down, and Tech had to go down to one knee to continue supporting Echo. He felt his body jerk, and when the smoke cleared, groaned as he found a large piece of shrapnel jutting from the armor over his abdomen. Hunter was there in an instant, taking Echo's weight off of Tech as Rex came over to examine his wound. "How bad is it?" Tech asked, laying back against the wall.
Pretty bad.
"Can't tell from here. We'll have to remove your armor," and Rex started. "He's fine, trust me," Hunter said, kneeling to extend an arm to Tech. Tech had never doubted his brother before, and he didn't start then, clasping Hunter's arm and groaning again as he was hauled up, shrapnel and all. He looked at where the warrior had been. He was still there, collapsed in a heap on the ground. His face was a bloody ruin, barely intact at all, and even his armor had been shredded in a way their weapons had been utterly unable to accomplish. "What happened?" Tech asked.
Is he dead?
Rex looked and shrugged, but Hunter smiled knowingly. "That'd be me," said Crosshair, stepping out from the thinning veil of smoke and standing atop the ruined hulk of the warrior they had been fighting. "Saw he was about to drop a grenade on you," he said, hefting his rifle, pride dripping off him like slime off a hut, and decided he deserved it more. Tech smiled despite himself, and even Wrecker seemed oddly relieved by the support. "You'll get plenty of congratulations once we make it," Anakin said, taking his saber from Hunter. "But for now, let's keep it moving. We've got wounded." "Yes, sir." Crosshair.
All right. So they had somebody, he shot the grenade before the guy let go of it. Smart. I thought he just let go of the grenade with his helmet and everything off. Why would you do that unless you're just going kamikaze on us? That's a good question. I don't know.
Said with a lazy salute before stepping off of the corpse of the Space Marine. A corpse that wasn't quite as much of a corpse as he should have been, something which was horrifically revealed when the warrior's hand snapped out. His sword had been blown out of his grasp, so it was with a combat knife that he sliced into and through Crosshair's leg just under the knee.
Ooh.
Crosshair didn't cry out. He just grunted like he'd been punched and twisted as he fell. He hit the ground facing the Marine, sighting down his rifle and pumped one shot into the bridge of Hastus's nose. The blast blew away the Space Marine's eyes, his entire nose, and most of the flesh around the upper half of his face, leaving his head.
But did it take him out? Because the grenade didn't take him out. Come on. Shoot him straight between the eyes. He better be dead. He better be dead.
As little more than a gory, burnt skull. Even this was impressive. What were his bones made out of? Tech wondered to himself. I've got Staunch in my pack, Tech said, and Rex quickly retrieved it. Wrecker pulled Crosshair away from the Marine's body, now surely dead. Rex wasted no time in applying the Staunch to Crosshair's bleeding stump, while Anakin stood over them, saber out, eyes darting as if he expected even more of those warriors to appear. Then there was a gurgling, a rasping, and then a creaking and thunk as the Marine, somehow impossibly still not dead, turned himself onto his back.
What?
Tech watched with unshakable horror and fascination. The man was laughing. The general seemed to hate that, Anakin's scowl deepening on his face as he approached the Marine, saber raised. It was then that the warrior began to speak. He was repeating something with what was left of his lips, over and over. Tech, can you translate that? Anakin asked.
For
Tech
the
blinked.
Imperium?
Can I? Oh, right! Just one moment, General, Tech said as he activated his recording equipment and pulled out his datapad. In a few moments, he had the translation. He's saying, to serve the Emperor's will, that we fight and die, it is our duty. And he just keeps repeating it, sir. Anakin nodded and opened his mouth to speak, but stopped when the Marine before them proceeded to sit up. Anakin was having none of it, and moved quickly, swiping his blue blade of light and snipping off the Marine's head. The bloody thing toppled off of Hastus's shoulders and dropped onto his legs as his body remained sitting upright. Anakin released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding as several seconds ticked by. Every blaster and eye aimed on the now most certainly dead form of the Space Marine. All right, let's get moving, the Jedi finally said. And with Wrecker helping to support Crosshair, Rex supporting Tech, and Hunter supporting Echo, Anakin led them out, grateful for the lack of any significant droid presence on their escape. It was as they were nearing their shuttle entrance to the exit that Anakin actually asked about their mission. Echo, did you manage to get the codes to Mace? The cybernetically augmented clone shook his head sorrowfully, and Anakin felt a sharp pang in his nerves as he considered the implications of losing both Mace Windu and his own master, along with millions of clones, all in one failure. The bomb didn't go off, sir, Echo said quickly, seeing the change in Anakin's face. The Jedi sighed in relief. Then what happened? Again, Echo grimaced. I think I made first contact with them, sir. The faction that Warrior and the hallway belong to. They seized control of the ship's computer, so they have control of the bomb now, too. They haven't detonated it yet, but honestly, sir, that might just be a temporary stay of execution for Anaxis, so I advise General Windu to retreat. Anakin nodded but scowled. It wasn't as bad as losing Mace Windu and Obi-Wan, but having been forced off of Anaxis would greatly hinder the war effort. As they entered the shuttle, Echo seized Anakin's arm. Sir, look, I know you may not have a lot of reason to trust me, as I am now. I know that you probably don't agree with me telling General Windu to retreat from the planet, but, sir, if you had seen what I had seen, if you knew the enemy the way he made me know them, we aren't ready, sir. We are so not ready that it's going to take a miracle to save Axum, maybe even to save the Republic.
Yeah.
And looking into Echo's eyes then, and remembering the warrior, remembering the strength of him, and how many of them had been on the bridge, remembering the words the warrior spoke as he fought through impossible wounds to continue a fight with an enemy he didn't even know, Anakin realized he believed him. He said as much to Obi-Wan when he next saw him, and Mace Windu after that. And of course, he reported this to the Chancellor as well. Then it seems we must become prepared, said Sheev Palpatine, no more than a diminutive hologram in the center of a desk around which all the aforementioned Jedi sat, Anakin included. This is the second place this new outsider threat has appeared. I am leaving the Axiom system in the hands of Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. You are to bestow your forces onto him for the time being. In the meantime, you are to go to Rothana, where the survivors of our true first contact have gathered. From among them, I want you to form a team of witnesses and experts, if there are any to be found. Measure out this threat, and then come to me with your results and your suggestions. The Jedi bobbed their heads as one. Yes, Chancellor, they intoned. The small blue image of Palpatine flickered and smiled. Good luck to you three, and remember, the very fate of the Republic could hang in the balance. Do not fail, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Oh, come on. What? Am I missing something? It says we got like 20 more minutes. Heard.
Hey there, loyal listeners. I am a fan with too much time.
What's going on,
and
my
I'm just
friend?
doing a quick unscripted take here at the end of my video in lieu of my normal preview to provide you with a little bit of elucidation, a little back and forth where most of the forth will be coming from me. But still, I think that you all are interested in and deserve to know what goes into how I determine how these scripts are written and how these stories turn out. And there's two big rule sets that I follow. One rule set is comprised of basically just one rule, and the other one of a few more rules. So let's go ahead and get right into this. And again, this is a bit unscripted, but I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can. So the first rule, big rule, most powerful rule, the rule that comes before all other rules is this: the narrative is king. I'm here to tell a good story, an interesting story, an entertaining story.
And you're doing a great job, my friend.
If you're expecting me to say, and Sidious called up Dooku and they got together 1 billion ships from the literally millions of worlds that they have under both the Confederacy and the Republic, and they went forward and smashed the Imperium forces, blah, like, okay, that's not going to happen. That's boring. Even if that can happen, in a certain future, if that was a story I was going to tell, I would just write a forum post about it and to discuss it on Reddit and have fun in that way, but I wouldn't go through all this trouble just for a lackluster narrative. I'm here to tell a good story.
Thank you.
Equally, if you think that I'm just going to have the Imperium drop out of the warp right over Coruscant, and then as the battle is joined and the entire Republic Navy is mauled to death by Vortex Nova cannon rounds, they drop a bomb on Coruscant and viral bomb the planet, which, I mean, okay, you do have to admit, that would be an amazing fireball. I mean, Coruscant is so big that it caught its own rings. But that being said,
still not a good story.
As cool as that set piece would be, it's got to be earned if it exists at all. I'm not just going to have one side casually defeat the other side.
Thank you.
Things will be interesting. The story will be good. It must be good, because if it isn't, it's not really worth telling.
Hey man, a fan with too much time So far, 100% agree with you, my brother, and you are doing an amazing job. Like I said, everybody, the writing, the animation is getting better episode to episode. And like I said, a fan with too much time has actually reached out, said we're doing at least a decent job with what we're doing, and he's excited to see the next two reactions because there's going to be some juicy episodes. So thank you for your time, my friend. You were doing a great job. Keep it up. Keep it up, because I am excited to see where this story goes. You are doing a great job storytelling as well.
You know, interesting scenarios. That's for Reddit. That's for forums. That's for post. Interesting stories. That's what we're doing here. So that's the first rule. The narrative is king. The story comes first. Second rule set. We'll call these the general rules of judgment.
Yeah.
And these are what cover my standard view of things. Again, story is king. So even if I deviate from these, know that that's ostensibly the reason why.
You're building the story.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the rules of judgment. So in regards to Star Wars, the Star Wars mainline films will take precedence over all other lore. And by the way, all this is in my discussions tab, along with a few other tidbits and treats that I'll leave for you to discover. But yeah, that's in my discussions tab on YouTube. So, in Star Wars, the mainline films will take precedence over all lore, with like a single exception I'll get into later on, because again, it's literally for the narrative, but it's such a big exception that I have to put it into the general rules.
Okay.
I'll try to be as consistent with this kind of thing as humanly possible, but the way it'll go is mainline films come first, followed by other live-action media such as Rogue One and The Mandalorian, and then that will be followed by canonical animated media like Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Rebels. After all of this, Legends will fill in the gaps. And yes, I will be incorporating Legends material as much as I can and as much as possible. You know, a lot of you new Star Wars fans may not know this, but the expanded universe was just so massive, it had so much in it, and honestly, it was much more adventurous than what you see with Disney. It sort of gave you the impression...
Yeah, guys, like I don't know if I've like told y'all like my history of Star Wars. I've seen the original 6 films, and I've watched, I think it's the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. So, I mean, I watched Clone Wars here and there on Cartoon Network, but I didn't really keep up with the story. So my Star Wars knowledge isn't, I wouldn't say I don't know anything, but I know the main key takeaways, at least from the first 6 movies. I agree with them. I mean, other than Mandalorian, I'm not really liking the direction Disney has taken. I mean, it's kind of, dare I say, boring. Really boring. And like I've said before in other videos, apparently Disney is picking up my childhood favorite cartoon, Dragon Ball Z. You see Goku up and right up here. And I hope and pray they don't ruin that. But it's a little backstory for you.
That, like, blasters were a Republic technology. That when you got outside of the Republic and then later the Empire, you actually would find that most aliens had developed their own weapon systems outside of blasters. And sometimes they're just blaster equivalents, like the Chiss had masers and super masers, blasters and turbo lasers, respectively. But then you had the Siruk, who had like the ability to pull your life force out and power their death droids with them, who had like these laser beam weapons that you would have to block in this very, very different manner, and that they could sometimes go through lightsabers if they were polarized correctly.
That sounds cool.
And you had like the Verpine shatter guns. Ooh, I loved Verpine shatter guns. You know, these mass driver guns that could shoot through tanks effectively, like they're like with a bullet, shoot so hard it would like have like a concussion wave almost. But they were called shatter guns because they were super, super easy to break, and you have to maintain them really rigorously. And then if you smack them, they'll shatter, thereby earning their name, shatter guns. That stuff was so cool. I love that stuff. I love it when the Star Wars universe feels big. I love it when the Star Wars feel more like, like Star Wars. So Legends. Everywhere I can. It's going to fill in everywhere it can. And there's a lot of places to fill in. The movies have not... The current canon is not really leaving us with a whole lot when it comes to the stuff that Legends touched on. So, going on from that, we're going to talk about something a little bit more controversial, the Wiki. I'm expecting a lot of people to come to me with Wikipedia stuff and to be like, hey, but look, Wikipedia says that a blaster can do this, and Wikipedia says that a range of a turbo laser is that, and I can't really abide the Wikipedia. The Wikipedia will be the very last source that I use.
And pause. If we are really trying to get this man information from Wikipedia, did you not learn that in school you don't use Wikipedia as a source? Come on, guys. Come on, we can do better than this.
Use when it comes to anything else that I'm aware of. And the big reason is because if I depicted to you a Star Wars battle using the things that are told to me in the Wikipedia, it would look very different from a Star Wars battle as depicted in the movies. And none of us became fans of Star Wars from reading the Wikipedia. We became fans of Star Wars from enjoying the movies and from enjoying the other visual or audio or written media about this. So that's what I love. That's what I will emulate. That's why I like Star Wars, and that's what I will follow in Star Wars. So when it tells me that a turbo laser has like a effective range of 3 light years, one, The Last Jedi, which love it or hate it, it is a canonical mainline movie and thereby takes precedent. It shows us without any question that blasters, turbo lasers do 2 things. One, they travel way too slowly in space to have an effective range of any light years, because even if they could go out that far without losing any energy, they would take too long to get there. No ship you could be aiming at would still be in that location by the time it reached a light year away. That's just literally years, decades, so long, I can't even tell you. But 2, aside from that, because we can measure how fast they move, 2, they do lose power in space. They don't maintain an equal power, and we can see that by there being a safe distance to maintain between the Rebel cruiser and the First Order fleet. And also, you know, that movie had a lot of flaws in it. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'll be the first person to tell you that The Last Jedi is riddled with flaws that I find quite intolerable, personally. That being said, this is not one of those flaws. We see
that's
Admiral
why I want
Akbar's
Disney to
fleet
get their hands
and
on
the
Dragon
Imperial
Ball Z
fleet
to go mess it
approaching
up.
each other in Return of the Jedi, and Admiral Akbar doesn't open fire. I mean, you can say that it's defensive technologies and ECMs and whatever. I don't really buy it. You know, Admiral Akbar didn't know that the Death Star 2 was shielded, and if a turbo laser really does have that kind of effective range, the Death Star 2 is unable to move or dodge those blasts. They should be shooting from as far away as they can to either force the Imperial fleet to intercept those shots with the physical bodies of their other ships, or to hopefully start wearing down and damaging the Death Star. So it doesn't make any sense, and I don't really buy it. I think that the reason Admiral Akbar didn't engage at range is because it would have been a waste of power, because those turbo laser blasts would have been far too weak to damage the Death Star significantly by the time they reached it, even unshielded. So that's the rule I'm using. Wikipedia doesn't reinforce that. That's just one example. There are many, many examples. I will use Wikipedia, but only if it's uncontradicted by any of the other sources I've mentioned already. And with that, I'll put that down. So, I mentioned earlier that there was an exception to my rule of the mainline films take precedent, and this is the exception. I will be artificially inflating the Republic's numbers.
Okay.
Let's be frank, okay? And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I really can go on and 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 on about this. I really can. 25 ships making up the bulk of the Republic Navy is absurd. It's frankly insulting. I mean, this is the Galactic Republic, and these ships are not Death Stars. even if they were 25 Death Stars, as impressive as that sounds,
Ain't a lot.
in a galaxy of millions of millions of planets. Literally, that's what's described. Millions of planets. Literally, they could start blowing up planets. Like literally, just let's start blowing them up. No reason, no whatever. Just start with the closest ones, and then it's
Take
just
'em a while.
hyperspace in the nearest system. Blam and blam and blam. You most likely, wherever it is you are, like if you just randomize what planet you're living on, you probably will never experience a Death Star cataclysm with 25 Death Stars running around the galaxy, blowing up as many planets as they can continuously. That's how much a million is. So even 1 million, and it's supposed to be many, many more than just 1 million. So, 25 starships. That's absurd.
Yeah, because what is it like? If you were, is it like if you were trying to count to 1 million, it would take you somewhat like 11 days, and if you counted to 1 billion, it would take you like 30 days. But if you counted to 1 trillion, it would take you like 31 years. Yeah, so even if they had 25 Death Stars shooting off beam left, right, front, and center all the time to the end of time, still probably have a good chance they ain't gonna get to you at all.
7 million clones. I mean, do I even have to get into this? We had more men fighting and dying in our wars here on Earth than in the Star Wars. I can't.
It just don't make
I
sense.
love George Lucas, but this is one thing that really needed to have been parsed much better.
Yeah.
So I will be inflating these numbers. I will be inflating these numbers because story is king, narrative is king, and frankly,
Thank you.
fellow fans of Star Wars, 7 million clone troopers and 25 starships don't stand
A chance.
even a fraction of a chance of withstanding an Imperial battle group, much less a battle fleet. I mean, I really can't. I mean, your best case scenario is that all the Jedi get together, fight off the Imperial ground forces somehow through some incredible tactics and genius and strokes of luck and trust in the Force and yada yada, and then they just obliterate everything else with just their starships, because I'm telling you, an Imperial battle group of 5 ships can eat 25 Venators like it's nothing. And that's not... And they're not
not
likely to
funny.
encounter the 25 ships all in one place. Because that's the entire Republic Navy. The Republic would have to pull back from everywhere else to do that. That's just... Woo! Okay,
Yeah.
enough of that. So, I'm bolstering those numbers. The numbers are going to be bolstered to about 500 million clones. That sounds like we're starting to approach the numbers. And again, this is with the idea that I'm keeping in with the spirit of the Clone Wars having been fought mostly by SDF forces. Okay? So 500 million clones is still not a lot in my opinion. And 15,000 Venators with support on top of that. And that's that. I'm not budging on that. I mean, anything
That's
less,
better.
and this is just going to be a war where the Republic can't take casualties. They have to make stellar victories almost, or stellar
Every single
defeats
time.
even, everywhere they encounter the Imperium, or they will quickly run out of men. The Imperium are coming in with a lot more than that, I'll tell you this. Like, yeah, not a lot more Space Marines, but, a lot more
Fleet.
Guardsmen. So let me see here. With the Imperium, things are going to be much shorter and much simpler, paradoxically, because they're a bit more complex. First off, the tabletop stats and RPG book stats will take second place to literally any other material, any other source materials that I can find. And this is because stats made for the games and lore made around, not lore necessarily, honestly, because the codexes are a big deal, and I do take them very seriously. But stats, mainly, like movement stats and attack stats and stats in general, on the tabletop for both the Fantastic Miniatures game and for the incredibly engaging RPG game, they're made to convenience the players. They really are. Even the RPG game is made to convenience the players. Not in the same ways, clearly, because if you play the RPG and you pit a Space Marine against anything, you quickly begin to realize that they do Space Marines pretty true to life, at least in my opinion, for a lot of things. But that aside, some of the dimensions for ships, some of the populations for planets. You know, hive worlds are supposed to be crowded. That means that we're going to need a few trillion people, not a few billion people, because there are videos about how population densities would work on ecumenopolises and stuff like that. Please feel free to look those up. But the point is that if we actually have a planet the size of Terra, with as many people as has been cited on Terra in some sources, it results in everybody having like 28 football fields around them in every direction. And that's how much space every person on Terra would have because how much of land has been developed on it. I mean, realize that we live in islands of cities in vast stretches of nothing for the most part. Unless you're in Florida, of course, in which case we're a giant hive of some kind. So, in any case, long story short, tabletop stats, RPG stats, they're made to convenience the players to make that stuff more measurable, and they're not usually thought out with regards to the universe itself. Well, in some ways, much less with the RPG stats than with the tabletop, but in either case, they'll take second place to everything else. So, what takes first place, you might ask? The fluff does. And that is where the Warhammer fans are probably rolling their eyes or sighing heavily, because the fluff in Warhammer 40K is extremely inconsistent and diverse. And it is so inconsistent and so diverse that the official stance by the company, Games Workshop, on it is that everything is true and nothing is true. And it's basically an all-you-can-eat, all-you-can-pick buffet of the lore. And that's fine. I actually like that a lot. I think it's cool. I think it actually has created a space where people can have vastly differing opinions on what is actually supposed to be true. And everybody kind of is cool about it because everybody knows that that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. That it wouldn't be Warhammer if it weren't that way. And I like that a lot. So, I take this Space Marine stuff very seriously. I could jack up the numbers. I know that a lot of people in the lore, in the fan base, are like, no, it's not 100 Space Marines per company. It's 1,000 Space Marines per company.
Yeah.
And it's not 1,000 Space Marines per chapter. It's 10,000 Space Marines per chapter because that frankly makes a lot more sense, right? Like given some depictions of Space Marines. But you know what? That's never been the way it is for me. For me, it's always been like, yeah.
Thumb. It's not always.
You got an empire. You got a Star Empire. 100 Space Marines tops. 100 Space Marines tops. No, it's like I like the idea of them having been these superhuman warriors. That let me explain. What I love most about Warhammer 40K in a nut is just that in a universe of Cthulhu's and like just faceless, horrifying, inhuman, extinct us in a second horrors facing us in every direction, literally from every shadow, from every star, from every planet that isn't our own.
He's got a point.
In a galaxy full of these things, mankind in Warhammer 40K does not survive because they haven't noticed us. We survived because we looked at all of that and decided that we would become that for them. We would become the monsters for the monsters. We would become bigger, crazier, stronger, more insane Cthulhu's and destroy and eat the actual Cthulhu's. And then we proceeded to be successful at doing that. And Space Marines are one of the big culminating points of that. Space Marines are like the thing that makes us the Covenant for every other alien race that we decide to destroy. And they're the humans, but they've got no Master Chief. They've just got the front row seat to their own extinction because of this insane, genocidal, superpowered, ancient alien race has come for them. And I like that. Mankind doesn't get to fill that role very often, honestly, in a lot of fiction. And in this fiction, we do. And that is what I will choose to portray, and that's what you're gonna choose. That's what you're gonna see when it comes to Space Marines and stuff. So, yeah, the fluff. That's what I will be drawing from here, and it will be, like not the most extreme stuff, but it will be stuff that, like 100 Space Marines can be expected to take down an average 40k planet. So expect that kind of force.
Fair enough.
And with that, I think that more or less wraps up this little freestyle explanation of what it is that I consider when I make these scripts and stories. I hope that you guys like this, and let me know in the comments if this is the sort of thing that you guys would like to hear more often instead of the previews at the end of the videos, these little short ups. And I'll go ahead and do that more often if that is the case. But with that being said, I'll see you guys.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that was episode 8, Star Wars vs. Warhammer, Warriors D2. Now, guys, big shout out to a fan with too much time. Like I said, he's actually reached out and commented on the videos we've done in the past, so we're doing a good job. And that made me feel special. The creator actually said something to us. I thought it was awesome. But, my brother, let me tell you what, you were doing a great job. Like I've said from the get-go, the story is getting better. The writing is getting better every single episode. The animation's getting better every episode. The story, I feel like the storytelling is just so honest and genuine. And I love what he said, that he's not going to make this just a one big one-sided shebang where like this whole space fleet drops out on Coruscant and they just drop a big bomb, or, you know, like all of the royal fleet coming together and hoping to get all the Jedi together, and with an incredible amount of luck, skill, coordination, they somehow come out on top. So I like what he said. I like the fact that he's going to build this up, and this isn't just going to be a short little one-off, because like I said, I think the next episode is the end of the first season, but I believe he's got upwards of like 40 some episodes now. So obviously the story is still going very strong, and I'm glad that we have a fan, a creator that will take the time out of the day to assemble something like this for us, guys, because like you said, I can honestly tell you, for like however long my videos are, imagine that multiplied by 3, and that's basically how long it takes from uploading, editing, all the goes into it. So I mean, just imagine him writing out the script, narrating it for you, putting the animation up, editing. Like, guys, that takes so much time and effort, and it's so refreshing to see that we have somebody that will do this for us. Because just like he said, Disney, when they got their hands on Star Wars, it became kind of lackluster. I hate to say the word boring, but guys, I mean, when the new episodes of Star Wars came out, I was not even interested in them. Now, they've done a decent job with The Mandalorian. I thought that was pretty cool, but I'm not all the way caught up on it. But I like where they're going with that. But like I said, and like he said, there's definitely, they're not the best at filling plot holes. And there's lots and lots of inconsistencies with what they do when they take over. And like I said, I've heard that they picked up Dragon Ball Z, and like, look, guys, Kai was okay. It wasn't my cup of tea when they remastered it. I like the OG, the original. I like the blood. I like the way the story was told. And when somebody gets that and changes that, it kind of takes away from the fandom. Like, I mean, we loved it for a reason. Don't go and change what's not broken. So guys, I hope they don't mess up my passion, Dragon Ball Z. But fingers crossed, because we're going to have to find out and see what happens in the future. But guys, that was episode 8, Warriors version 2. That's going to be the end of the video for tonight. Tell me what you thought. Did you like the way he basically gave us a synopsis at the end, or do you like more so him just giving you a preview of the next episode? Honestly, I would like just the preview at the end, but I would like to see more, like just make a video of you telling the process that goes into how you make the scripts. Maybe just put a wide base, like, hey guys, this is from step 1 to finished product. This is how I do it. And this is what goes into making these scripts. I feel like that would be a cool episode in and of itself just to watch, because like I said, guys, it takes a while, especially if you're doing this by yourself. I don't know if he has any supporters behind him, any other animators or voice actors. But I mean, like I said, guys, it takes a lot of time, and it is a breath of fresh air to see somebody that will put that time and effort in to something of this sort. Because like you said with Disney, and I mean even with Games Workshop, guys, is like, I know with the new Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 that I just downloaded, they don't even run support for that game anymore. And you're like, guys, you created that freaking game. Why don't you run support for it anymore? So I literally, to play the game, I had to rework something on my computer just to get it to play for more than a minute. And it's like, guys, like, stand by your products. We're trying to support you because you're doing something that we enjoy. So stand by us because we're supporting you. But it just seems like that isn't always the case nowadays, guys. But what you gonna do about it? It's gonna be fans like this, content creators like this, that are the changing face of this kind of fandom. So guys, you definitely need to get behind this man. Support him. Go like, go subscribe, go tell him he's doing an awesome job, because he is. So guys, with that being said, y'all have a great rest of your day. That's gonna be the end of the video. Before you head out that door, I would also enjoy some support. Maybe hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Like I said, once we hit 2,000, either 2,000 or finishing up this series, and I think we're gonna hit 2,000 a lot faster than we finished this series. So let's get there together, you guys. Let's give away this lightsaber. I would love to do more giveaways, but I would really like to give away the lightsaber first. Kind of playing along the Star Wars versus Warhammer thing. I would like to maybe do a Star Wars and then a Warhammer giveaway, but we'll see what happens. We got to give the lightsaber away first. So guys, y'all have a great rest of your night. Peace, love, happiness to you. And always, guys, be easy. Love you guys. Y'all have a great night.